All right, let's see what you guys came up with for the completely randomized design to compare the two treatments. So what's the first thing we would need to do if we are outlining a completely randomized design? Yes. We need to have a process to randomize it. So how do you guys want to randomize these? Random number generator. Okay, talk me through exactly how to do that. Pretend I've never done this before. You got to give me step-by-step idiot-proof directions. Okay. Okay, so when you say randomly assign them a number, we're going from 1 to what? 1 to 50. And then we're going to use that random number generator to randomly pick how many numbers? 25. Why 25? Yeah, we need 2 groups because we're going to have 2 treatments. One's going to be our control group, so they get like no treatment. Or in this case, we don't have our control group, so we've got these 2 different experimental groups because we want to know which one's better than the other. But most of the time, we're going to have a control group that gets no treatment, and then our treatment group gets the treatment. We want these to be as evenly split as possible. It's not always possible to have it exactly half and half, but in this case it is. So we're going to randomly select 25 numbers. What are we going to do with those 25 numbers? Assign them to which group? We got to go step by step, like absolutely idiot proof. Anybody could follow these directions. There we go. So you'd want to lay out, I didn't put all of those little details, but if you guys are doing this on the AP exam, you would want to make sure to have all of those little details in there. Yes? You could do it like that. So you could have it randomly pull one of the numbers, and that person would go to this group. And go back and forth between those, absolutely. The thing that you'd want to make sure to mention in that case is if the random number generator pulls an already assigned number, ignore it, have it pull another random number, do this until all of the students have been assigned to either the treatment group or the control group. Yes. You want to make sure that you are laying this out, like literally my 2nd grade daughter should be able to read how you are describing randomizing, and she would be able to follow those directions. If you handed her a random number generator, she could follow those directions there. All right, so we start off with our 50 students. This is our completely randomized design. We're going to use random assignment, which again, you guys need to lay out completely. So you talk about, in Ben's example, the 25 random numbers that get pulled, they get assigned to the online prep class, and then you have to explicitly state the other 25 unselected numbers are going to be assigned to the teacher prep course. So group 1, 25, group 2, 25, you always want those to be roughly equivalent. Show me which group is getting assigned what. And then what would we want to do to finish out this experimental design? Yes. We're going to compare their SAT scores. At the conclusion of the class, when the students take the SAT, compare the SAT scores from the 2 groups. Yes, dear? Good question. Okay, so for the completely randomized design, we wouldn't want to split it up between juniors and seniors. Not for a completely randomized design. However, for the next one, number 2, I'll go back to that in just a second, guys. The counselors hypothesize that the online versus classroom results could be greatly affected by the grade level of students that were put into each treatment group. They know seniors generally score better on the SAT than juniors. How could we adjust our experiment to ensure that there's an even split of juniors and seniors in each class? Draw an outline of the experiment with your modifications. So I'm hopping back to this one for just a second in case anybody needed to grab a picture of it. Yes?
So what about like on our tests? Is this okay? Or do you still want us to write it out? Like if we
So you could do it like this, but where it says random assignment, you're going to want to have some text explaining how you're going about randomly assigning. So you can draw a map like this as long as any of the pieces that need extra explanation, you are adding those pieces in. Yep. Yes?
So like what I did was where it says random assignment, I put random number generator assignment, and then in between the two groups, I put parentheses and put repeat.
That would be fine. Just make sure that you're telling me how you're, like, if you don't tell me that you've already numbered the students, then I don't know what that random number generator is doing. So you have to be explicit that we are numbering all the participants 1 through whatever. Or you could say we're using student ID numbers because those are unique to each student to number the students, and then we're going to use a random number generator to pull student ID numbers or something along those lines. Tell me how you have labeled the students numerically, and then describe how you're assigning them to the groups using those numbers and the randomization. It would be appropriate in a group this size. You could even say, you know, write all the students' names or write all the students' ID numbers on slips of paper. Put them all in a bowl, mix them around with your hand, draw out the first slip of paper, they go to the group 1 online group. Draw the next slip of paper, that student goes to the in-person teacher prep group. You could talk about it like that. You don't have to use a random number generator necessarily, but you do have to talk about how you're randomizing it. So if you were to write them all on slips of paper, you have to make sure to talk about mixing them all in the bowl. That's the randomization part there. All right. So this one, when we think there's a difference, yes. Oh, you want me to go back?
No.
Okay, you have an idea here?
Yeah.
Absolutely, let's go.
I said 20 juniors, 105 seniors, 20 plus 5, and 15 seniors, 10 juniors in the other group.
So I like that because you're making sure you're getting some in each group. The problem's going to be if your group that has the 20 juniors and the 5 seniors in it, we already expect our seniors are going to perform better, right? So if you have 20 juniors and 5 seniors in one group, my expectation would be that group is probably going to score lower, and it has nothing to do with which prep class they were in. Ty.
I said that like one senior and one junior can be like put into like either online test prep or the teacher until like there's no more of the seniors, and then the 10 left over juniors can be split like 5 online and 5 teacher.
You would have to describe exactly how you're selecting those numbers. So again, you have to talk about your random assignment, but that could absolutely work. Yes.
So I said choose 10 seniors and 15 juniors, like when you're picking from like the random.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to keep hounding on this particular piece. When you talk about randomly assigning them to the groups, make sure you describe somewhere how you're going about doing that. So in this case, I wouldn't number the students 1 to 50. I would number my seniors 1 to 30 and my juniors 1 to 20. And then you could randomly select 15 seniors and randomly select 10 juniors. So here's what my outline for this looks like. I start off with my 50 students, and I begin by separating them into, we call these blocks. This is not stratified sampling, but it feels a lot like it. The difference between stratified sampling and what we call block design is that we're doing an experiment. When we're doing an experiment, we're still going to split people. If we're going to do a block design, we're going to split people based on a characteristic that we think is important, the same way that we choose our strata in stratified random sampling. But because we're doing an experiment with it, we call it our block design. So those 20, sorry, I guess it's 20 seniors and 30 juniors. My apologies, I was getting my numbers switched around. So I'm going to randomly assign my 20 seniors to 2 groups. I'm going to have 10 in each group. I'm going to call them Group 1S for Group 1 Senior and Group 2S for Group 2 Senior. You have to talk about how you're going about doing that random assignment. I would do the same thing for my juniors, randomly assign them to Group 1J for the online prep course, Group 2J for the teacher prep course. And then within my 20 seniors, I am going to compare the seniors to the seniors based on the 2 classes. And I'll compare juniors to juniors. So I'm going to compare the seniors' SAT scores. I'm going to compare the juniors' SAT scores. And then I'm going to compare those 2 sets of results to each other. I'm going to combine my online seniors with my online juniors. I'm going to combine my teacher prep course seniors with my teacher prep course juniors. And I'll compare those results as well. So I compare within my blocks, and then I compare across my blocks. This is called a block design. Like I said, it feels a lot like stratified random sampling. Stratified random sampling is about how I pick out the people that are going to be involved. Block design, I already have my participants. It's how I decide who to assign to which group. If I think there's an important characteristic, I want to make sure that both of my treatment groups have equal numbers or roughly equal numbers from my blocks. Anthony, was that similar to what you had for the other one? Okay. On the test, which is going to be after fall break, by the way, in case I hadn't said that already, it's not happening before fall break. It'll be happening in that first week after fall break because we're going to finish up all the material probably by Friday. So when you guys come back, we'll start our review process. So we'll probably take 1 day to just like generally review. We'll spend a day doing some multiple choice review. We'll spend a day doing a free response question review. I got to double check. I'm thinking it's either going to be Thursday or Friday of the week that we get back that we'll test. I know which one I'm pushing for, but I want to make sure that me and the other class are testing as close to the same day as possible. I'd like to do it on Friday after we get back, because I'd like to have a little bit of extra time with this, especially with that week gap in between. I think the more we can do some hands-on stuff when you guys get back, the more it'll help activate your memory on these pieces. I think they are, because Mrs. Balaton had to be out, so hopefully that means that we'll end up agreeing on the same day. We'll see. All right. Let's look at that third question now. It says the counselors are now worried that a student's GPA is certainly going to affect their SAT score. So even in this randomized block design, would it be possible that I get the top 10 seniors in my online prep course and seniors that are not in my top 10 in the teacher-led prep course? It is possible, not likely, but it is possible that I end up with this unfair split. I have more top scoring students, more students with high GPAs in one group versus the other. And that could make my results difficult to interpret. It might lead me to one conclusion when that's actually not the case. We want to try to control for that in any way possible. So let's look just at the juniors. We want to be sure that the different GPAs are being evenly distributed into the 2 treatment groups. How could we be sure that the GPAs are evenly distributed? Eni.
Okay, so I said that we could put 5 students that like have average GPAs, and then 5 students that are below average, and 5 students that are above average.
What if all 30 of these juniors are considered above average for the class? What if we had, say, the top 30? How would you do it then?
I would probably like split it by ranking.
Split them by ranking. Talk to me about that.
Okay, so the top 5 are
We only have 2 treatment groups.
I mean, yeah, but like, I'm splitting them into 5, like 3 because it's 15.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. So like 5 here, 5 here, and then the middle 5, 5, and then the lower 5, 5. Would it be fair to compare if I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the like first ranking student to the 5th ranking student in the teacher-led prep course, and the 6th to the 10th ranking student in the online prep course? Do you think that would be fair comparisons? Okay, so how could I do this so that it would be better? Yes.
I said that you could put them in order from the lowest to highest GPA, assign them each a number, or no, you put them like that, and then every other person goes into the group.
I like it. I like this. Okay, so the only issue with that is how can I make sure to get this randomization going on? Here's how we do that randomization, because I absolutely love your plan here. So we're going to take them either from lowest to highest or highest to lowest. We want to put them in order by GPA. I want to take my top 2, my first and second students. So highest GPA and then second ranking student. I'm going to say flip a coin. And I'm going to say if the coin lands on heads, then the person that ranks number 1 goes into the online prep class. If it lands on tails, then I'm going to put them into the teacher-led prep course. And the other student from that pair would go to the other option. And then I'm going to do that for the 3rd and 4th, for the 5th and 6th, for the 7th and 8th, all the way through my 30 juniors. So that way I make sure that it's not just 1st, 3rd, 5th in the online group and 2nd, 4th, 6th in the teacher-led group, because then I still have the higher scoring ones here and the lower scoring ones here. Even though it's more fair, it's more balanced, it's still off a little bit. So if I use that coin flip to randomize which group they go in, sometimes I'm going to get the higher between the 2 in my teacher-led course. Sometimes I'm going to get the higher between the 2 in my online class. This is called matched pairs design. This is called a matched pairs design. So put the 30 juniors in order from highest to lowest GPA, or you could say lowest to highest. You just want to make sure that you're putting them in order by GPA. Take the 2 students with the highest GPA and pair them. Flip a coin to assign 1 to the online class and 1 to the teacher class. I will tell you on the AP exam, they want to know not just flip a coin and 1 goes here, 1 goes there. They want you to tell them specifically. I'm going to flip that coin. If it lands on heads, the one with the higher GPA goes to my online class. If it lands on tails, the one with the higher GPA goes to the teacher-led class. The other student would go to the unselected one. You have to be very, very clear. Again, this has to be like 2nd grade level directions. Tell them specifically. There should be no thinking involved for the person that's trying to execute your plan. They don't have to intuit everything. All the directions are there. And then you do have to be really, really clear that you're going to repeat that process with the next 2 highest GPAs until all 30 juniors are assigned. If you only talk about what you're doing with that first pair, you've only got 1 person in each class. So we're going to end up with 15 pairs total. 15 students in each of these classes. At the end, when I do my comparing, I'm going to take those top 2 GPAs, I'm going to compare them to each other. Then I'm going to take the 2nd highest 2 GPAs, and I'm going to compare them to each other. I'll still compare my online to my teacher-led overall scores, but because I have these matched pairs, I can look at what's the difference in their scores here, what's the difference in scores here, what's the difference in scores here, and then I can compare those different pieces. Matched pairs design is a lot like block design, but each of my blocks is only of size 2. So I have my highest 2 GPAs and I randomly assign between those. And then I have my next 2 highest GPAs and I randomly assign between those. And then my next 2 highest and I randomly assign on and on and on until every single student has been assigned to one of the two groups. Ran out of room on my paper to write this, but I would absolutely, if I was writing this on the AP exam, I would have this, and then I would go on to talk about once they've been randomly assigned, then they're going to take the course, they would take the SAT, and then I would compare the results between the pairs, and I would compare the results between these two classes. Do you guys have any questions so far with what we've kind of covered? All right, so completely randomized design, we don't split people into groups necessarily. We want to just randomly assign from the whole big pool. This is like simple random sampling, except again, it's not how I'm choosing my sample, but how do I decide who goes to which group? I know for bare minimum, at least the last 3 years, they have had students design an experiment. So write it out. They ask, what are the treatments? Who are the individuals, or what are the individuals? They want to know who would go in the control group and who would go in the placebo group, like what's happening to those two different groups. And they want you to lay out, how are you randomly assigning them? What are you going to do with them once they get randomly assigned? You know, describe the whole thing. Based on the training that I went to recently, I would highly expect another one like this to show up on the AP exam, because the ones that students consistently show that they're struggling with, those ones show up on the AP exam again. All right, let's kind of wrap it up a little bit, and I want to give you guys another chance to practice some of these ideas. So on the back side, let's talk about our big ideas. And then we'll take a couple minutes for you guys to try the check your understanding that's down at the bottom. So big ideas for today. Blocks. A group of experimental units that are similar. So in this case, we did juniors and seniors. You might do your blocks as male and female if that's what you think would make a difference, or perhaps athlete and non-athlete. Whatever you think is an important characteristic that would be dividing these results that you think is important to take into account. How do you decide if you've got these multiple different groups? Say we've got gender, athlete versus non-athlete, and grade in school, junior versus senior. How do you decide which way to do your blocking? Whichever one you think has the biggest impact on your response variable. So whichever one you think has the most impact, that's how you would choose your blocks. Randomized block design, you separate your subjects into blocks, and then you randomly assign the treatments within each of those blocks. So they should be roughly equivalently split between however many treatment groups you have. Matched pairs design, subjects are paired, so you have blocks of size 2, and then they are randomly assigned to a treatment. Each subject receives 2 treatments. The order of the treatments must be randomized. So a lot of times in matched pairs design, you will you'll randomly assign them to one of 2 groups first, and then they'll go to the one that they didn't do, so that you can see just within a single individual, how does this change? This might be hard to do with something like SAT prep, because we know that the more times you take that exam, scores improve. But this would be really helpful for like a placebo versus a new medication trial. Somebody is going to be randomly assigned to receive the placebo first, and then they would get the treatment second for a period of time, and then switching back and forth. So that is another way of doing a matched pairs design, is where you match someone basically with themselves, and you would randomize the order of those treatments. I want you guys to go ahead and try to check your understanding down below. You've got 3 questions down there. Let's take about 5 minutes for you guys to look at those 3 questions, and then we'll look at what my answers are for those. see what we've come up with. Describe a completely randomized design to compare the effectiveness of the 3 advertisements. How would you do this? Yes.
Each you use a random number of 300, randomly generate 100 numbers. Repeat the process for the second group. The last 100 get thrown into the last group. After that, put them all in groups, give them each an advertisement, and compare their likelihood to vote for that presidential candidate at the end.
I like that. I like that a lot. So the only thing that I would make sure to add is that you want to make sure to either say it needs to be unique numbers or not previously selected numbers, or you need to say if a repeat shows up, ignore it and move on. So you have to explicitly address what happens if the same number gets pulled twice. That would be my only suggestion on that one. So yeah, you have your 300 subjects. You go about randomly assigning them to the 3 groups. Group 1 gets exposed to add number 1. Group 2 gets exposed to add 2. Group 3 to add 3. Then you compare the effectiveness. So who's more likely to vote for those? Or are they more likely to vote for that candidate versus another candidate? I love that you went through and explicitly described how you would do your random assignment. How could you do a randomized block design for this experiment? What do you think would be an important block? Age. Awesome. So talk to me about blocking by age. No, that sounds good. I'm fine right now for time purposes, especially that we can say random assignment. I do want to make sure that as we get ready for the test, we are practicing describing that random assignment out. You got much more detailed than me. I just separated them into younger and older. But yes, I categorized them by age as well as my strata. Used random assignment to get them. So I did the younger 150 and the older 150, wherever that dividing line happened to fall. I like yours as well. You went into a lot of detail about how you made your different blocks. You could block it by gender, absolutely. So you could block it by gender. Say you'd have a block for identifies as male, a block for identifies as female, and a block for identifies as non-binary. And then you would randomly assign half of each of those groups, depending on how many were in each of those groups. You want to compare the effectiveness within a block, and then you want to combine and compare the effectiveness across the blocks. All right, last question. Why might a randomized block design be preferable in this context? Why would a randomized block design be preferable in lots of contexts? What does it allow us to do? Yes. Yes, and I would say it goes a little bit further. It allows us to control for possible confounding variables. So if you think age could potentially be a confounding variable, you would want to create your blocks based on age. If you think gender could potentially be a confounding variable, you would want to set up your blocks based on gender. It's one of the ways that we can lower the variability of results, making it easier to determine which ad is most effective. Remember, we always want the lowest variability possible. We want low variability and low bias. All right. Homework. Homework assignment number 2, 4.2 is due when? Tomorrow, Tuesday. If you need another copy of that homework, please come and see me.